Hi everyone, nice to see you. My name is Olga. I work at JetBrains in the Developer Experience Research team. And we were planning to deliver this talk together with my colleague, Yanina, but unfortunately she didn't get the US visa, so I will do it today all on my own. So wish me lots of luck. Thank you. The title of my talk is 3 words to remember when working with people's motivation and productivity: autonomy, competence, relatedness to others. So I hope if you have any concerns about the title of the talk, this guide relieves them. And we are originally researchers with a strong background in cognitive psychology, cognitive studies, and organizational psychology. And now we are conducting research on developer productivity and developer experience within JetBrains, as well as outside with our users. And I'm not an engineer, I'm not a developer, but I am an expert in how people are functioning. So I know how they think, how they feel about their work, and what kind of stories they tell us about it. And I believe that my expertise may enhance your technical knowledge and help you to make your developers even more productive. So today we will be talking about software developer productivity from a psychological point of view. So to improve software developers' productivity, it has become crucial for business in recent years. Companies that want to stay ahead, they invest a lot of money and a lot of resources and a lot of effort in trying to understand what kinds of improvements will lead to the better productivity within the shortest possible time span. And to enhance productivity effectively, organizations need some empirical evidence. And my talk today, I hope, will provide some ideas which factors to prioritize. And I'm pretty sure that you have the same feeling as I do, that in the last years, the word productivity has become a buzzword. So tool vendors are talking about enhancing developer productivity. Research is aiming at finding some correlations between productivity and various factors. And a lot of new developer productivity and developer experience frameworks are being invented and tested. How people understand what productivity is, it varies greatly. So productivity is still a vague phenomenon. But still, we are somehow able to measure it, to improve it. We choose some metrics, and mostly they are objective, because it is what we can more or less easily measure. And as they are objective, we tend to trust them. So they are a low-hanging fruit for us. And in this chase for objective metrics that seemingly measure developer productivity, the idea of a developer as a human being is often missing, just like a human figure is missing in this painting by Pablo Picasso called The Accordionist. And let us not forget that first and foremost, developer productivity engineers are still working with humans, at least for now, when developers are humans. And that is why if you want to build an efficient and stable developer team, you need to know what are the key factors of human productivity. And as Brian, you said it yesterday, in the end, no matter how advanced our tools are, every problem is a human problem. So productive humans are motivated humans. And it is as simple as that. And today we are going to disclose a few drivers of human motivation. So let's figure it out together. What drives human motivation, and also how can they influence developer productivity, not only from a tool-based perspective. I will firstly cover the theory behind people's motivation and how it leads to productivity. I will then show you how this can be applied to the context of software development. And of course, I will mention AI, because how can I avoid this topic in 2024? And as a takeaway, you will get some guidelines on how to influence developer productivity from a human-based perspective, as well as some examples of questions that you can incorporate into your surveys, developer productivity surveys or pulse surveys. So let's start with a bit of theory. why people do what they do. Research shows that people have two types of motivation: extrinsic and intrinsic. Extrinsic motivation is usually well known and recognized. It depends on external factors such as rewards and punishments, and we as people encounter it all the time, starting from our childhood. So I bet you remember your school grades. Now, as adults, we have salaries, we have benefits, we have career promotion. That is all about the external motivation. Intrinsic motivation is much more subtle and complex. It comes from within the individual and is driven by the internal factors, such as curiosity, enjoyment, and a sense of fulfillment. It refers to activities in which motivation lies in the behavior. So, for example, it's video gaming, playing music, or doing sports. Both types of motivation work. They are still motivation. However, intrinsic motivation is more often overlooked, as it is harder to manage and harder to capture. At the same time, intrinsic motivation, and we know it from the research, is crucial for knowledge workers and developers among them, of course. Although we need to admit that good salary and benefits are still important. It is what people expect, otherwise they will not just come to work. So, in order to prevent demotivation and burnout in developers, we have to bear in mind not only the extrinsic motivation, which can be easily measured and managed, but also intrinsic motivation, which is much more subtle, and I would even say elusive. And that is why let's talk a bit more about the intrinsic motivation. So it depends on the fulfillment of three basic psychological needs: need for autonomy, for competence, and relatedness to others. So these are three basic psychological needs. And all humans have them. It's an axiom. And that is why we think that developers also have them. So if you want to boost the intrinsic motivation of developers, fulfill or at least ensure that you are not overlooking these three basic psychological needs. So, and many studies show that fulfillment of these three basic needs lead to higher motivation, higher job satisfaction and engagement, and a better overall well-being. And these factors, in turn, lead to higher productivity. So everything that I have just mentioned is described in the self-determination theory. Self-determination theory was formulated in the 70s and 80s by Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. And since the moment this theory was first proposed, and up until today, it is the most comprehensive and one of the most fundamental theory of people's motivation. And which is also important, it is evidence-based. So this theory helps us understand why we do what we do. And now let's speak a little bit more about all these three basic psychological needs. So the first one is the need for autonomy. Autonomy refers to the feeling of volition and choice in actions. It is when people perceive their actions and behaviors as self-directed and in accordance with their interests and goals. So in other words, people need to feel that they have freedom in their actions, that they are the authors, that they are the actors. So let me show you some example questions if you want to feel and understand what this competence means. And maybe you might even gain some insights into your own levels of autonomy. So ask yourself, do you feel you can be yourself at work? Do you feel that your job tasks are in line with what you really want to do? Do you feel free to do your job the way you think it could best be done? The second need is the need for competence. Competence refers to the feeling that you are effective and capable in achieving goals. In other words, people need to feel that they're able to achieve some meaningful results and that they can be experts, at least in one field. So here we're going to have some questions for you to feel this competence, this need for competence. Do you feel that you have the skills and resources needed to perform your job effectively? Do you feel that you are able to apply your knowledge and skills to make meaningful contributions? Do you feel that your job tasks and responsibilities align with your skills and strengths? And last but not least is the need for relatedness to others. So this need refers to the feeling of being connected and appreciated by others. It is when people experience a sense of belonging. In other words, people need to feel that they are seen, valued, and needed by others, and not just by any others, but by those others who share the same values, the same mindset, and the same goal. And one more time, I have some example questions for you. Do you feel supported and valued by your colleagues and manager? Do you feel like you belong to your team or organization? Do you receive feedback or recognition that you are doing actually good things? And by the way, now you know a little bit more about these three needs. So I want to ask you, how do you think fulfillment of which out of these three needs is like the most important for boosting productivity? Remember your answer? I will get back to it a little bit later. So as I already said, when developers, as any other human, understands the worth and purpose of their jobs, feel ownership and autonomy in carrying them out, and receive clear feedback and support, they are likely to become more motivated, more satisfied, more engaged, and have overall better well-being. And in turn, this leads to the higher productivity, higher levels of productivity. So now let's discuss how we can apply this theory to the context of software developers. A vast amount of research in various fields of organizational psychology indicates that employees who experience the fulfillment of these needs are producing better results. So self-determination theory may explain a lot. However, it is not. There is a lack of research on software development in this field. And at the same time, our colleagues from other tech companies who conduct research on developer productivity and efficiency have indirectly touched upon this theory in their research and in their results. So, for example, there is a study published by colleagues from Google in 2021. What predicts software developers' productivity is the title of this research. So colleagues surveyed around 600 developers across 3 companies about various productivity factors and self-reported productivity. And they found out that the factors that most strongly correlate with productivity are non-technical factors, such as job enthusiasm, peer support for new ideas, and useful feedback about job performance. So it might be surprising that all these 3 factors are non-technical factors. However, now you know a little bit more about how intrinsic human motivation functions, and these results are not so surprising anymore. They are reasonable. All 3 factors can be mapped onto 3 basic psychological needs. So we suggest that when people fulfill their needs for autonomy and competence, in other words, when they achieve results, meaningful results, in the way they believe is best, they are likely to be enthusiastic about their job. Those who get useful feedback about their job performance are likely to feel related or connected with their colleagues and feel competent. So recall the last time someone told you that you've done a great job. How did it feel? I bet it was like a nice feeling that you are competent, you are able to do some cool things. So it's good to receive a clear and positive feedback. And those who are supported for their ideas, they feel autonomous, competent, and connected with their colleagues because their initiative is seen, valued, and appreciated. Another research was conducted by Margaret and by your team, yes. And this team worked with Microsoft. So this research, as well as the previous one, is really comprehensive. And we used just a little fraction of the results from our colleagues' research. So if you want to dive into the topic, we really encourage you to read through these articles. There are a lot of insights in them about developer productivity. So in this research done by Microsoft, they aimed to figure out which social and technical factors impact job satisfaction and perceived productivity. So colleagues made an extensive analysis of research and theories and came up with potential factors that might influence developer productivity, perceived productivity, and job satisfaction. So they found out that top factors of perceived productivity are a good manager, feeling productive, being fairly rewarded, and having a positive team culture. I remind you that this is a small fraction of the results. They are much more interesting, but today we'll discuss only this small fraction. So as we see again, social factors were rated by developers as more important for their productivity compared to the technical ones, which didn't manage to make it to the top. And again, we can map these factors onto 3 basic psychological needs. So take a moment to look closely at our analysis. So as you see, when our colleagues do research on developer productivity, even if they are not bearing in mind this theory of these 3 basic psychological needs, it turns out that these needs are still shining through the results. But let's look at developer productivity more holistically. The SPACE framework, how can I avoid it here? Hi again, Brian, yeah. So the SPACE framework is one of the most popular and multifaceted frameworks. I'm pretty sure you've heard about it, at least at the summit this year, or you have even tried it in your companies. And the SPACE framework assesses developer productivity on 5 dimensions: satisfaction and well-being, performance, activity, communication, collaboration, and efficiency and flow. And I'm going to show how those 3 basic psychological needs can be found in each of the SPACE dimensions. So developer satisfaction is defined by the level of happiness and fulfillment developers experience in their job roles. And according to the self-determination theory and its empirical data, satisfaction and well-being always depend on the fulfillment of 3 basic psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness to others. These findings are reflected in multiple scientific research and studies and that were conducted all over the world. And since one of the most useful sources of information about developer productivity is asking developers, so surveying them, I will show you how you can incorporate questions regarding these 3 basic psychological needs into your developer productivity surveys. So here I give you a few examples of the questions that you can customize for your teams and your goals. Just ask your developers whether they are satisfied with the autonomy they have at work, whether they are satisfied with how much their tasks and responsibilities are aligned with their skills, and are they overall happy to be part of their team. These are, of course, only the example questions, so tailor them if you want to do so. So the second dimension is the performance dimension. Performance means the outcomes of the software development process, either the code quality, the customer satisfaction, or whatever else is important for you as an outcome. So developers who feel autonomous or in control and competent or skilled in performing their tasks tend to produce higher quality outcomes. So, for example, among other questions, ask your developers if they feel free to do their job in the way they believe will lead to the best outcomes. Or do they have enough skills to master tasks that often don't have predefined algorithms? Activity dimension stands for a number of actions and outputs completed in the course of development work process. So here we will not provide any example questions, although they are possible. To measure activity, you can just use any objective metrics that you feel free to use and that are the most suitable for you. So effective collaboration and clear communication are essential for successful software development. I'm sure you know this. So when people are communicating and collaborating efficiently with their colleagues, at least their need for relatedness to others at work is being fulfilled. So communication and collaboration may manifest itself in various ways. It might be about the atmosphere in the developer team. It might be about getting appreciation from colleagues, or about the amount and the quality of the feedback they receive. So as an example, you may ask if your developers get useful feedback in a timely manner. And last but not least is the efficiency and flow dimension. So it shows whether it is possible to do work with minimal delays or interruptions. And from a cognitive psychology perspective, we know that achieving the flow state requires a balance of two key factors. So on the one hand, you need to have enough uninterrupted time to focus on deep work. So it is meaning that you should have freedom to plan these time slots in your calendar and on your work schedule. On the other hand, you must be sufficiently competent to avoid distractions from constantly checking whether am I doing right. So as an example, ask developers, do they have freedom to schedule their work the way it will provide them enough time to do deep work? And check whether their tasks actually allow them to get into the flow state. Are they challenging enough but not overwhelming? And here, once again, you may see how three basic psychological needs can be traced in the 5 space dimensions. So what does it mean? This means that, among other things, you can measure how well these needs are being met and make any improvements if you feel that there are some issues with them. So we have demonstrated how the concept of these 3 basic psychological needs can be applied to the context of developer productivity. And so either you are looking for metrics that will help you to measure developer productivity, or you are searching for factors that correlate with them. Just keep in mind that in the core, in the heart of developer motivations and people's motivation lies the fulfillment of these 3 basic psychological needs. It's an axiom. And if you bear them in mind, I believe that you will do your managerial tasks more efficiently and more wisely. Another good example of applying self-determination theory is the current research on how developers want to use AI. So it is a great topic now. There are a lot of studies and they keep emerging. So let's look whether the self-determination theory may help us here. For instance, colleagues from Microsoft asked developers in their latest research what aspects of their work would developers be most excited about AI helping them with. And developers could choose up to 3 options provided by the researchers. And what did they find? So they found out that developers want to delegate to AI generating tests, analyzing code, and writing documentation. So non-surprisingly, developers mostly want to delegate routine, uninteresting, non-challenging tasks, precisely those that do not promote the senses of autonomy, competence, and relatedness to others. On the other hand, they wish to keep all the challenging tasks by themselves. So around the same time when colleagues at Microsoft did their research, we launched our annual developer ecosystem survey. So we are conducting it since 2017 each year. And this is a large and comprehensive research on developers. It covers all the areas of their life, starting from technologies and programming languages and up to their hobbies and routines, everyday routines. So, and we got similar results, but based on the data from more than 15,000 developers. Developers are willing to delegate to AI writing code, comments and documentation, writing tests, and searching for code fragments. And more than a half of them don't want to delegate writing code and understanding code. We also ask developers how enjoyable these tasks are and how time-consuming they are. And it turns out that writing code and understanding code are the most time-consuming activities. And at the same time, they are the most enjoyable ones. So developers, as authors, as actors, do not want to lose their feelings of autonomy and competence at work. So what all these results tell us? If you want to develop AI assistants or any other features or tools that you want developers to adopt, to easily adopt, and that will boost their productivity, keep in mind these 3 basic psychological needs. These tools should not hinder developers' feelings of autonomy, competence, and relatedness to others. And finally, let me share with you a few recommendations that I have formulated based on the self-determination theory. So every decision you make as a manager will either hinder or promote the senses of autonomy, competence, and relatedness to others. So instead of trying to find the magic pill to improve development productivity in tools, or only in tools, just evaluate your decisions based on how likely they will increase or decrease developers' feelings of autonomy, competence, and relatedness to others. And let's get back to the question I asked you in the beginning of my talk. The fulfillment of which basic psychological need is the most important for boosting developer productivity, in your opinion? So let's figure it out with the open ballot. Please raise your hands, those who think that it is the need for autonomy. Yeah, thank you. And now, if you voted for competence. And finally, raise your hands, those who voted for relatedness to others. Great, thank you. Are there anyone who was thinking that like three of all of them are really important? Great. So, actually, according to the research, the fulfillment of the needs for autonomy, in fact, has the greatest impact on productivity, no matter what your job role is. So congrats to those who have chosen autonomy. And findings of various studies indicate that autonomy support from managers in a variety of work settings enhance both satisfaction and motivation. So be the leader that is autonomy supportive. And here you see some actions that you might check whether you are an autonomy supportive leader yourself. However, if you're not doing everything on this list, at least talk to your developers. You will be surprised how much valuable information they are willing to share with you. And you might say, okay, great, everything that you have told us is brilliant, but we are doing business here. Like, we are not able to always support the need for autonomy, relatedness, and competence. And I agree with you. This is true. We are doing business here, definitely, and people get paid for their jobs. And there will be definitely some unpopular decisions that will hinder developers' senses of autonomy, competence, and relatedness to others. But on the same time, keeping in mind these three needs may help you to balance unpopular decisions with boosting this fulfillment of these needs. So thank you for your attention. I'm ready for your questions. And here you can scan the QR code for the full presentation, for all of the slides. Thank you. And last but not least, so we would like to invite you to be part of our upcoming research on developer productivity engineering. We plan to run both interviews and surveys that will enhance our sense of autonomy, competence, and relatedness to you. And we hope to bring more insights back to the community. So I really encourage you to sign up for our interview offer surveys. Thank you.